Hello, I'm Thomas Hare, Chief Content Officer of the Performance-Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association that serves companies in the performance and direct-to-consumer marketing world. Welcome to the latest episode of Take 20, created by the PDMI's Brand Response Council. These 20-ish minute live conversations featuring leaders in the performance marketing world, speaking about the hottest topics in the industry, are scheduled twice a month. Before we get to today's conversation, a quick housekeeping note. We'll be addressing any questions from the audience at the end of the session, but you don't have to wait to ask them. Please feel free to use the questions tab on your control panel to type and send your question in. We'll collect them and we'll try to get to as many as possible in the final moments of the episode. You know, podcast advertising is expected to exceed $2 billion in the US and $4 billion globally in ad sales in 2024. And all it takes to know what kind of advertisers are spending money on podcasts is to listen to your favorites. When you do, you'll immediately notice that the prevalence of performance marketers featured in the growing advertising blogs. Of course, audio has long been an effective performance and D2C marketing outlet, but how is the growth of podcasts and digital audio shifting how marketers, buyers, and the teams tasked with creating content and selling ad time against it view the outlet? Good news. Brand Response Council Chair and Take 20 host Chris Foster of Modern Postcard welcomes this tremendous trio of experts in performance audio and podcasting to deliver answers to these key questions about the space. With us today are Jill Albert, President of Direct Results, Krystina Rubino, founder for the offline growth marketing practice at Right Side Up, and Molly Ruland, CEO and founder of Heartcast Media. Welcome, everyone. Chris, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom. And thank you for being here, folks, for our 97th episode of the Take 20. So we're so happy to have you and honored that to have such masters of your craft here with us. Like Tom mentioned, in this world of kind of predominantly digital first marketing, there is this overlooked offline channel that has continued to grow, provide brands and agencies with an outlet away from the congestion of mobile phones and browsers and the like. Podcasts, satellite radio, these are wide avenues to explore to reach this targeted audience. Tom mentioned the dollars coming through, but one of the interesting things about globally of digital audio is that spend is going to reach over $7 billion. And interestingly enough, it seems to be undervalued because consumers spend 21% of their time on audio media, but it accounts for only about 4.5% of the spend. That's according to IAB. So clearly there's a huge opportunity for brands to engage consumers via audio ad formats. So now we're going to talk with these panel of masters about the best practices and what makes great audio content terrific to target and how to leverage the audio landscape to reach your ideal prospects. So we're excited to jump on in. Jill, we're going to start with you. Direct Results has worked with McDonald's, Angie, Chewy, AAA, and national brands on audio campaigns. So through the years and different clients, what to you has seemed to be the most dramatic evolution of audio performance marketing?
First of all, I just want to say it's interesting to hear you first talk about how this is sort of this lost media. It's not only a huge time, it's also really the most engaging media because people interact with their favorite personalities. So thank you so much for this. Change, my gosh, I think the biggest change deals with choice. So now can choose to be in the audio performance marketing space with radio, podcast, streaming, satellite, Alexa, YouTube. We've got AI tools. We have so many tools that give us choices to tell our story most effectively. Different people connect with different media in different ways, but we can do small tests in little portions of the country, reaching a very specific demo to get our messaging correct. And then we can scale as we go across the country with podcasts or streaming or network radio. We can use AI to test different kinds of messaging that range from a male to a female to the CEO of a company to special offers and even different kinds of music to see really how to deliver the most effective message to drive ROI. So I think that this choice is so exciting for advertisers because, first of all, it gives huge tools for negotiating, but also it puts a lot of accountability on performance marketing and that we can make to come out with the best possible outcome.
That's interesting you mentioned AI because AI audio is much further along than AI video. right? Because everyone has seen kind of the AI video makers where, the ears are not quite right, the mouth just doesn't quite work, it just feels a little animatronic-y, but voice is actually very good with AI. It seems so much further along than video. So have you seen that the AI's components really helped you, like you said, test messaging, test phrasing, and it seems a little bit more fluid and human sounding?
So we are not, I don't know about you ladies, we are not using AI voices. What we are using AI for is to test and to deliver the most effective message. So for instance, we just finished doing a test for, I'll mention Omaha Steaks. So we have a lot of different messages that are delivered by personalities, but then we have different messages that are brand messages that are delivered by the CEO or by a female or by an older male or a younger male, different kinds of offers. And we can use that AI to hone in on what messages are being accepted the most effectively. We're not using AI.
So it's not an AI voice, but it's AI script. The AI can help you test the various scripts that the voice talent records.
And to optimize and to scale, yes.
That's fantastic. That's because you can get learning so much faster back to your clients.
It's super cool. I mean, all of this data and all this technology is amazingly effective, but also, I throw out a cautionary tale, which is it's not all 100% correct. So you have to use brain and your experience and your simple logic to really drive, you use the AI and you use the data and then you use your experience, and that's what drives the best response.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the idea of using the technology you have to help scale quickly, but you still have to have the experience to suss through it all to know what you need to deliver for your clients. And Krystina, I guess I'll ask you, especially with the audio space. So Right Side Up is a collective of marketing specialists with expertise across all growth channels. And you joined to start the offline growth in the podcast advertising. Apparently, it's now a top 3 performance podcast buyer. So congratulations on that. So how do you advise clients to think about audio as part of a whole omni-channel marketing approach?
Yeah, it's interesting because your point about audio being rather underutilized compared to time spent from consumers is very apt. I would also say it's underutilized in an overall media and marketing mix for many performance brands, just because, and I come from an integrated background. I started my career in digital marketing. I got very disillusioned with programmatic display and realized, having a specialty in paid search, that brands could hire the same expert paid search marketers that I was hiring at the agencies. And I was like, you guys, I think I'm going to respecialize here. But what I've realized over time is that those channels can become a bit of a crutch. So when you have an existing channel as part of your mix, obviously your first instinct, and it's the right one, is to optimize and continue to scale that channel, right? It's kind of like CRM versus new customer acquisition. You want to make sure you're keeping the customers that you have happy before you're moving on to prospecting in deeper waters, right? Same thing goes for channels. But what I do find is that a lot of brands are very reluctant to add new channels to their mix for fear of measurement challenges, which, no, it's not as simple to execute as something that's, like more of a Google or Meta pixel, where you're just like placing one pixel or using a container tag to, basically collect all of the pixels that you need for the different channels that you're optimizing and calling it a day. It requires a little bit more attention, but the role that audio can play in your mix, and specifically podcast advertising, I tell brands a lot that if you are not one of the brands that enjoys household level awareness and, you have, let's just say, like a trust and credibility hurdle with consumers, right? There are so many brands that podcast advertising have helped to get over that initial hump with consumers, where if you're listening to somebody and you trust them, right? Let's just say that Molly or Jill host a show that I listen to because I listen to them for beauty advice and business advice and lifestyle advice and all of these things. Well, when they recommend a new skincare product, I'm going to be like, yeah, they're impeccable and I love their taste. And obviously I'm going to listen to them, right? Even if I haven't heard of it before. So I often counsel brands, if you're finding diminishing returns in existing channels, if you're running up against some of the more traditional challenges that you face in marketing, Sometimes they do require somewhat traditional solutions, but measured in a way that very much allows these channels to stand up to their digital counterparts in terms of the place that they serve in your mix.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that most marketers do have a natural, I shouldn't say aversion, but circumspection before trying a channel that they're not familiar with or experienced with, right? There's a risk of time investment. There's a risk of, gosh, what if it doesn't work? There's a risk of, hey, I'm putting a lot of money into something I'm not sure and familiar with. What are some of the things that you do to assuage customers' anxieties about trying this channel?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that this is why I tell brands all the time, like my belief is that a lot of the best work is done in-house. But if you don't have the in-house experts that you need, there are maybe, I like to say there's probably fewer than 150 people in the US that can end-to-end execute podcast advertising campaigns with no agency support. And so what are the odds you have this human just chilling on your staff, ready to like go, right? You don't have that expertise in-house. So my counsel to brands is often like educate yourselves to whatever extent you're interested in, but hire experts and lean on experts, even if it's just fractional until you're bringing the channel fully in-house under your management. You can work with outside entities like agencies or consultants or whatever. You don't need to learn all the lessons that I've learned from spending $250 million in this medium in the last 5 years. Like, let me save you that time. Cheat on your homework a little bit. Like, it's okay. Like, there's no need for you to go through all of the, you know, the hurdles, basically. My brain's still in Olympics mode, which I love this year, but there's no reason for you to jump all of the same hurdles that we did. The other part is just sharing results from existing campaigns, usually in a blinded way, even though we have case studies. The other part is I love connecting in-house marketers to each other. I think that one of my favorite things to do is to be somebody that's like, oh, you're just launching this channel, you're in fintech, you need to talk to so-and-so over here at Rocket Money or Robinhood. You guys would love each other, first of all. Second of all, they came up against a lot of the same challenges you did. And look at the scale that we're enjoying there now with them. So yeah,
that's a great way to do it. In fact, you know, people want to find like folks who've gone through that same journey, right? And they've come back from the wilderness and they survived and they can bring new knowledge to the tribe. So that's fantastic. And speaking of podcasts and impeccable people, Molly, let's talk about Heartcast Media. And you know, Heartcast creates podcasts for brands, and you also produce your own show. And full disclosure, I had the privilege and honor to be on her show as a guest, and she is freaking awesome. She's a lights out host and communicator, and everything was incredibly easy to do. So I encourage anyone to, you know, get out in touch with Molly on that. But in addition to advertising on podcasts, this channel is a new way because it's changed the way brands can promote themselves.
Absolutely. Thank you for that introduction, Chris. I always like hanging out with you. That was a lot of fun on that show. So thanks for having me here. I think it's really important for these brands to identify what is the result, what is the end goal that they're looking for, because spending a lot of money does not mean guarantee success. And I think you can look at Pacific Media and you can see giants, you know, brands that tried podcasts and failed miserably and spent a whole lot of money doing it. And I think brands need to understand that, like, as much as I love Slack, I'm never going to listen to your podcast. Like, I'm just not. Like, at the end of the day, the last thing I want to do is talk about Slack. You know, I love Trello, probably never going to listen to their podcast unless it's actually bringing me value. So I think people conflate visibility with effectiveness and understanding how downloads work and the difference between downloads and plays, and what are you really trying to accomplish? Is it brand awareness? Is it business development? You know, getting really, really clear on what the metric is there, because brand visibility, you know, costs a lot of money. And so do you want to be Joe Rogan or do you want to close deals, right? Like, so it's really just deciding what is the avenue that you're taking. If you're a large brand, getting really creative, like I can't remember the company, but there's like a toothbrush company that did like a 30-second daily podcast that you could listen to while you brush your teeth. Brilliant. Brilliant, right? Like that's how you get it done, right? But like, you know, so you can see where people have gotten it right and see where people have gotten it wrong and find your lane in that and make sure it's something that people actually want to hear and not you just shouting from the rooftops about your brand that nobody's actually listening to. And sometimes sponsoring other podcasts or advertising on other podcasts can be more valuable. But I think from a business development tool, I mean, listen, podcasts are a sales enablement tool, period. That you want to build, you want to close deals, it's all about relationships. And so senior salespeople and business owners can use the podcast to get in front of the exact people that they want to do business with. And the best way to show people how you work is to show them how you work, right? So you can confidently say Heartcast Media is a great operation because you went on our show and you got the emails and the expectations and you knew exactly what would happen and you got tagged on LinkedIn and we did everything we said we were going to do. So now you can confidently recommend me. So I think if people kind of maybe back away from some of this large scale visibility. Now, if you're a large company, obviously that's what you want. But if you're a smaller company, think about the relationship, think about that network building, think about showing people and focusing more on the person on the other side of the table and not the audience at all. And I think people get that wrong. They're like, well, we want to start a podcast, but what do people want to hear? Well, are you Joe Rogan? Why do you want to be popular? Downloads don't close deals, and downloads lie. I mean, we've seen the bloodbath in the last 12 months with the downloads versus plays. You know, how many people spent millions of dollars on ads that were never actually heard because the podcast was never actually played. And so there's a lot of smoke and mirrors there too. So, you know, I would recommend working with people like Krystina and Jill who fully understand that space to make sure your dollars are getting spent. But from an in-house sales enablement tool, a podcast is your ultimate tool. And then you can leverage that in so many other directions. Now you've got snippets, now you've got SEO, now you've got written content, now you've got, you know, it's a 5-to-1 model, right? You can interview people you've worked with and have case studies, you know, and success stories. You can interview, you know, you've got a lot of angles there. So it's smarter, not harder, right? Like be really, really clear on what the end goal is and then only do that. And don't worry about audiograms that no one ever listens to, right? Like just, you know, it's business.
And I love the duplication of content because when you have a podcast, there are tools that you can use to transcribe it. So you can use that for the seeds of blog posts. You can use that for, like you said, small little snippets and meta ads and the like. And so it's a very versatile channel in that respect. And I think I love your message of, you know, having the goal and the purpose behind it instead of saying, well, as a brand, we should have one. It's like, well, no, you have to answer maybe why you have one. Yeah, no, I like that a lot. So I guess, you know, speaking of podcasts, Jill, I'll turn back to you. There are about 3 million podcasts worldwide. And, you know, the digital audio is equal and it's kind of projected to surpass the broadcast audio. So how do you advise clients as to which audio channels and specific shows make the most sense to place budget?
Yeah, so first of all, Molly and Krystina, you guys are so right on. It's so interesting to listen to you because there's so much smoke and mirrors in this space. And, you know, so many people are interested in pushing out their content rather than connecting with people. And the connection is really what audio is all about. You know, to a large degree, you know, we think of sort of podcast as sort of like that conversation with your super smart best friend that's going to give you some great advice. And then we, of course, have radio as your other friend that's going to give you advice. And they're both very, very valid. But when it comes to podcasts, it's specific to a particular category or a certain area of expertise, that whole lean-in advertising area. And people don't, you know, tune in for the advertising, but I think the numbers are like something % where people consistently to a podcast buy that product. It's really astonishing. But you know, don't let go of radio either. So, you know, when you're talking about ad-supported media, you've got about a third of people reached on a daily basis with ad-supported streaming and audio, and then you've got about another 2/3 that are reached with AM/FM. And if you combine the two, you've got about 75% daily reach, which is far outperforming any other media.
Sure.
So that's super important for us when we choose programs. You know, we all have a tremendous amount of data because we track and you know, the performance of different verticals and different pull up, you know, who we're trying to reach at what cost per engagement. But it's really important to also work with people that you trust. So, you know, rather than choose a podcast that might, you know, possibly fall flat, you know, we work with different programmers and different groups that we trust. So if one falls flat, we know that and they're going to pull out another show, possibly, you know, at bonus or possibly with some kind of special engagement that's going to help bring us along. The other thing, podcasts are really phenomenal. You know, we might start with a podcast ad, but then we quickly move to like a 360 kind of approach where we're now using a podcaster for, you know, Instagram and YouTube and interviews and, you know, appearances and newsletters. So there's so many ways to engage people. But I think it's two things. One, you know, not choosing one particular program, but choosing, you know, a strategy that's going to surround a consumer's life and reach them multiple times throughout the lifestyle, throughout their life. Really trust that we know are going to be there for you and that they're going to help you with your advertisers as you get into a bind, because it's not going to be a perfect, all the data in the world does not make for a win time. So there's some phenomenal people out there. It's so fun to see in this world where people are like, those people are lazy. There's so many good people in this space, and people are so engaged and so interested and so smart. So you know, choose programming, but choose really good people to work with too.
Yeah, you know, the people make all the difference, I think. And I think, Krystina, you were talking about, you know, connecting relationships between marketers from one company to another and kind of building that circle of trust that folks, you know, can lean on. And you had mentioned, Krystina, that you came from an integrated marketing background in digital and the like. And every channel that we know has a specific job within the funnel, the customer experience. What's the primary job of audio?
You're not going to love my response, which is it is extraordinarily different by brand, right?
Sure.
So when we think of like bottom, middle, upper funnel, audio can play, podcasting in particular, can play a role in every single part of that, right?
Okay.
For a very long time, I was the biggest naysayer on branded podcasts for all of the reasons that Molly outlined. I host Right Side Up's podcast. So you're like, oh, she's a hypocrite. No, it's B2B. It's a very, very different thing. And exactly like you say, you deepen relationships. My big thing was I wanted to launch a show that, you know, we talked about the things that growth marketers talk about behind closed doors when we're all working in house and when we're talking to each other, when we're not recorded, when we're, you know, trading notes, right? So in that instance, it's, you know, it's actually a tactic that spans multiple parts of the funnel for us, for the brands that we work with when they think about podcast advertising. There are some brands that we work with that the medium has to pay out on its own from a ROAS or a CPA or whatever perspective. And then there's other brands that understand that, you know, at their scale, at their spend, it's going to be more of a mid-funnel tactic with bottom funnel performance, but they want to kind of take bigger swings and use the medium in a way that, you know, it is a reach medium. It reaches over half of the US population on a monthly basis. So it can be a combined reach and conversion medium, either through sponsorship or, like Molly said, like there's a graveyard of branded podcasts that have never seen another episode. The other thing I'll say is that we regularly, on an annual basis, we probably sponsor somewhere between 7,000 to 8,000 shows tops. And there's 3 million podcasts. So when you think about the overall like universe of podcasts, that's another thing where it's like, yes, you can feel overwhelmed, but we've actually re-verticalized all of the shows that we work with, because apples and, you know, other categories are essentially meaningless. Like if somebody can tell me what society and culture means, I'd love to have that conversation with you. But it's like, you know, is it female lifestyle? Is it aspirational? Oh, is it true crime? Is it spooky? Is it cults? Are we talking murder? What are we talking, right? So it's a very different, like these are not only genreified, but verticalized. And so then the question becomes, okay, what are you trying to accomplish? Oh, you're trying to reach this particular consumer as she's doing X, Y, and Z. Great. Here's the shows that we're going to do. We're going to go with like small to mid-sized shows here because we have a modest testing budget and we need to drive results kind of out of the gate, right? That channel, that plan is going to look very different and play a different role in that brand's mix than, hey, actually, I have $4 million in Q4. Not that any of us have ever gotten that call. I have $4 million in Q4 and I have metrics to hit by the end of the year. And I kind of need to have a big Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So like, what do you think we should do? That's definitely not a call that I've picked up in the last, month.
That's what you're manifesting. You're manifesting. It's happening.
Make it happen.
I was joking around that, the second back to school TV commercials hit, everybody kind of remembers they have a job to do and starts calling. So that was a lovely phenomenon that started happening in August, where it was like, hey, can we be on air and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, yes, but okay, sure.
No, that's excellent. That's a great answer, because the job is going to be different for the brand at the different stages of the funnel, for different CTAs, for the different shows. I love that, and that makes total sense, and it speaks to the variety of opportunities with audio. So, I think that Molly, you had talked about the pitfalls, and Krystina, you just mentioned the vast wastelands of the graveyards of failed branded podcasts. However, should a brand decide to do this, Molly, what are some 3 best practices that they should just absolutely hold to if they want to begin their own promotional podcast?
Number 1, get super clear on the objective. Number 2, hire somebody else to do it. Don't put that on your team. They're not going to do a good job. And number 3, remember that every single step of that production and operation and communication and outreach, all of that is a direct reflection of your brand, so don't get it wrong. Now, I would imagine with the bigger brands, they're spending the money, probably too much money, where smaller brands have this idea of like, I'm not going to buy a microphone, I'm not going to do anything, I'm just going to see if it works. Well, Plot Twist is not. Save your time, don't do it. Just stop right now. If you're not going to go all the way, then don't do it. But look at the failures. Pacific Content had the biggest brands in the world on their roster, and their podcast didn't go anywhere. Like, look at them, listen to them, see where they went wrong, learn from it, and do better, because they shouldn't have failed, but they just weren't designed the right way. So I think getting really clear on like who's your audience, and not confusing being a podcaster with having a branded podcast. Those are very different things, and I have to talk people off the ledge of that all the time. And so it's getting clear on that. And maybe you don't care about downloads. Maybe that interview could be a $5 million deal for your company, and you don't really care if 5 people or 5 million people downloaded the episode, because you got the deal out of it, right? So getting really, really clear on what that success looks like. But outsourcing, I would say, we work with like the Atlantic Council. They're the largest think tank. They've been around since the 70s. They have a full audio and video team. We produce their podcast because they understand that even though they have all the tools to do it, it would have to go from audio to the video department, to the copywriting department, to the graphics department. It would cost them so much more money than to hire an agency that's going to do a smoking job on it from top to bottom and make you high-class graphics and high-class video. You do it the right way, but also don't spend so much on it that it's become such a line item. You should spend more, I think, on the promotion of it than you should on the production of it. And I have no doubt that those guys were probably paying 20 grand an episode, which is, hey, call me if you got 20K an episode to spend. I will not say no. But I will also caution you to never give anybody that much money for a podcast, because it's not worth it, unless you're NPR dropping 60K an episode with ethereal sounds in the coffee shop and all of that, sure. But if you're not doing that, you shouldn't be spending anywhere near that amount of money. And beware of vanity metrics. Is your phone ringing?
That's great. No, I love that advice. So manifesting the 20,000 per episode for Molly, manifesting the $4 million spent for Krystina. It's going to happen. Right. Jill, you're already in the thick of it with your political ads. So, so this was so wonderful, ladies. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I am really impressed with all the new information that I've learned about this media. And I think we're well past the Take 20, which was totally worth it, which was awesome. And Tom, I'm sure that we have a handful of questions from the audience before we split out.
Yeah, we do. We have a couple, maybe 3 here. Yeah, wonderful job, everybody. First one, brands live in a multi-channel universe these days. Is there, or are there particular verticals where audio/podcasts will play well into that right now? Any hot verticals in podcasts right now?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. So I think verticalization is really contingent on what you're selling, right? So we work with, household brands that are, their LTV is pretty low, right? I used to work on Advil, and our old joke was like, well, if the CPM is more expensive than a bottle of Advil, like Godspeed. But I have another brand that makes a very expensive, very incredible pet product that sees success in different verticals. In terms of hot verticals, like there's always the hits. So male comedy has been around since, you know, the beginning of the medium. That's how it started in a lot of instances. The old joke is like two dudes and a microphone. A lot of those podcasts still actually crank. The other surprising one for people is that like some of those shows actually crank for B2B. Because like if you think about it, I don't know about you guys, like I joke around and I'm like, I don't know who listens to the show that we produce in off hours. I really commend those marketers because that couldn't be me, right? If I'm listening to podcasts, it's about something that has nothing to do with my job, truthfully. So you think about it and it's like, okay, well, where am I going to reach business decision makers? Sports, fantasy is heating up right now. So there's a couple of good shows out there. I'll plug just because I love them. Harris Fantasy Footballers is like a little gem of a gem. Sweet guys, great content. There's little shows like that. And then you got all the way up to like, you know, your Bill Simmons, your Ringers, etc. So these are all verticals and genres where you can actually like buy the smallest shows or you can buy giant shows that perform. In terms of female lifestyle, I'm a big fan of like more aspirational content. Like women lifting up, women supporting women, also giving each other advice and like having the conversations publicly that we've had privately for so long. A lot of those shows tend to bang like they do. What else? And then the other thing that I'll say is there are some times where verticals don't matter at all because the media is so well priced that even if it's not exactly like my favorite instance in the last few years was we had a brand that was like, I want to reach suburban moms. And we're like, yeah, okay, you and everybody else, right? No kidding. But there was a meal delivery platform. And it was like, well, who wants to have a burger delivered to their house but doesn't want to put pants on? Gamers. And gaming wound up becoming one of their biggest verticals and was like an absolute slam dunk for them. So it's all very, very, very brand dependent. And then there are going to be some instances where media is just priced right. The talent's having a moment. Maybe the publisher hasn't like quite updated their downloads to the extent that they need it to be. And you can kind of get in and you know, not take advantage, but like work with a partner whose show is on the rise because that growth you scoop by booking out. The last thing I'll say is place your upfronts with the shows that you know work. We're in the middle of upfronts right now. We're actually going to be upfronting this week, redoing our rate cards, all of that for 2025. Buy those shows and book them out for the entire year. You can still get, you know, reasonable canceled. This isn't television, it's not firm. And just book them out because, you know, you will enjoy the growth that show enjoys when you book early and maintain.
Great, thank you, Krystina. Really well done. One more. And I think this might be coming from someone who works in your side of the world, Jill and Krystina, who's facing this. With the expanding array of podcasts out there, how can you advise clients, some of whom might have very personal opinions about their favorite podcasts, and let that color their professional life, about which shows might be best for them to advertise on? I can say I might, if I was a brand person, I might be guilty of this because I love my podcast, but I would not suppose that I would know that I'm supposed to advertise there. So thoughts on that?
I can take this, and then Krystina, maybe you'll plug in. But I think, you know, again, it's all about the data, but to a large degree, Krystina touched on if it's the right price. What we're trying to do is environment plus price plus messaging, right? So it's really important to have a very good, compelling story. It's very important to buy the audience at the right price, and it's very important to buy the right audience. Any of those without the others probably won't lead to success, but if you miss 2 or 3 of them, you're out of luck. So I always want to hear the favorite podcasts of my clients. I always want to hear that. And then we'll talk about, you know, the opportunities within that. But I think it's good to hear what the point of view is of all of our clients. But you know, the reason why we have data and the reason why we have an area of an expertise is because we specialize in, you know, connecting with consumers and getting them to respond. You know, I'm a big fan. You know, Krystina said she's so big on in-house. I think it's really important to have out-of-house people because I think sometimes people get too close to their own story and they need somebody outside of their universe to say, hey, you know what, that's a really interesting idea, but here's another idea that you can't see because you're so close. So I think it's important to have both points of view.
Yeah, I think it's, if you have the expertise in-house, then, or, you can work with an outside entity, then to kind of learn up, then that's, it helps. The media planning by committee is a danger in any medium, right? That's a tale as old as time. I'm a recovering agency veteran of a decade. I can tell you that the relationships are what actually will help you the most there. I think you could kind of tell this just by my exposure on this show, but if you know me, I'm a very, very direct human being. I have no problem telling the brands that we work with if something is or is not a good idea. And if the brands that you work with trust you, first of all, there's a way to compassionately deliver that information, right? Be a human being, validate, understand, talk like a person, and say, yes, I absolutely, oh, I love you. I know you really want to be on Joe Rogan. Do you really want to spend the money that it requires, or do we want to maybe go on like the next Joe Rogan, or like one of the people in his universe? Because yes, the audience fit is there, and I absolutely know that your founder listens to that show. I love that for him. However, numbers, facts, etc. So that tactically, because I have a feeling this is an agency person that's like, how do I make my client stop telling me what shows to buy that I know aren't going to work for them? Tactically, validate. The other thing is I will solicit suggestions, like Jill said. I'll send a spreadsheet out, like we'll send a spreadsheet out, and I did this when I was in-house as well. Everybody give me your favorite shows. Tell me, just throw everything on there, everything you love. And there's going to be moments where it's like, I know, like all the NPR shows in This American Life are great, but when you work with public radio, you can't actually include an offer. So do you guys think that's going to work for a brand that's very ROAS conscious and promotionally sensitive? No. So it's just, empathize, validate, but lead with facts and stick to your guns. And ultimately, we don't talk about this enough, but there are bad relationships in this industry where it's like, I'm not going to take your money, because if you want an order taker, there's an agency partner out there that will do that for you, that will place that buy for you. But I am not going to consciously buy something that I know is going to tank for your brand. That is just a recipe for disaster for everyone involved. That's not how you build a reputation,
Right.
I just wanted to add one more thing, and that is, because because podcast is such a lean in media, the authenticity is so important. So there are podcasters out there and there are shows out there that are interested in making money, but most of them really want to deliver an authentic message. And that's the key to, what shows you're on. Without that authenticity, that listener knows in a heartbeat, and you're done, you're out.
Yeah, all of a sudden it's like, yes, I do love this product, and I definitely didn't have my producer put this ad in front of me 10 seconds before we went live. It's like, that's not going to serve anybody. So yeah, the brand connection with the host is ultimately what translates to listeners, for sure.
Absolutely. And it's super easy to figure out which ones are authentic before you ever get on air.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Jill, Krystina, Molly, Chris. Appreciate it. Wonderful conversation. If you missed any part of this, it'll be likely be on our YouTube channel by Friday, and a link will be on all of our social media. Our next episode of Take 20 is set for Wednesday, September 18th, when we'll dive into a conversation about TV media's programmatic buying shift. Please visit thepdmi.com/take-20 to register for the webinar and check out the upcoming schedule. Online registration, of course, continues for PDMI West, October 7th through 9th at Hard Rock Hotel San Diego. Badges are just $3.95 for PDMI members and $5.95 for non-members. $100 discount from on-site registration rates. And once you have your badge, our specially priced hotel room block for the show is open. But as of right now, just for one more day. That's right, access to the discounted block is scheduled to end tomorrow, September 5th. So don't hesitate. Visit thepdmi.com/PDMI-West to get your badge. You can get access to book your room. Thanks again for checking out this episode of the PDMI's Take 20. Thank you to everybody for being here. Take care. Be well. Bye-bye.